Hi, this is Free and Golem. A couple weeks ago in Shmup Slam 6, we cleared Crisis Wing together, and here we are now to talk about our playthrough.
Yeah. So this was our first time clearing the game. We honestly hadn't even made it terribly close on most of our previous attempts. We only had like one go to stage 7. And this is a game that we've been practicing for a year.
I have 80 hours logged.
Yeah, and I think I have 80 hours on mine as well. And so I did spend a decent amount of time playing it in single player as well. And I know you did too, because it's just a good game and it's a good one to return to all the time. But this was something that, like, for 6 months or so, we practiced every weekend for a couple hours. Then there were a few months off where we were playing something else. And then in the couple months before Shmup Slam, we were practicing it like, I don't know, once a month or something. Really not that much. But at that point, we had our route. It was just that we had never finished off the credit. So generally speaking, our strategy from the beginning is to alternate item pickups with myself being the red ship, taking the blue power-up, missiles, and Golem, the blue ship, taking the red power-up, spread shot. And the idea is that those are complementary weapons. The missiles do a lot of damage, but there's a pretty big shot gap. Well, not a lot of damage. They do by far the most damage of all the weapons, but they have a big shot gap, and so they're not that popular to use. But with the spread shot covering for them, taking out popcorn enemies, it's nothing but beneficial to have missiles. So there was an instance where we kind of split up the screen, and you'll see in general we split the screen left and right. I think in co-op we've learned at this point it's generally better to play like doubles in tennis, where each person has their part of the court that they cover, versus both trying to simultaneously execute whatever their single player route is. For us at least, that has always been the riskiest strategy, and you'll see places where we do dodge on top of each other and things go wrong.
One thing, one thing that's worth noting about cooperative play is that enemies aim, I think, towards the closest player.
That's right.
Which is not the behavior you see in every cooperative shooter.
Yeah, and this is also a game that has an extra wide screen or camera wobble or horizontal scrolling, whatever you'd like to call it. It has lazy scrolling, which means that it doesn't scroll unless one player drags it away from the center. So if the two players come back towards the center from the outside, the screen won't scroll, it's a little difficult to understand, I think, what I'm saying, but it's a huge difference versus a cave game where the scrolling is constantly active and the screen never stops moving. So for this boss, this is one where we are mostly on top of each other.
Just took a first death there.
And that, in a way, it's relieving, though, in a live run to have that stupid death out of the way. Because it's like, well, what else can go wrong?
Yeah, it's not like Battle Grega where you're gonna try to game the rank, but I swear my best friends are where I have deaths that I shouldn't take, and then there's just that one less bullet to kill me later in the game.
So, in that case, the death did not affect our power level at all. So there are 3 power-up items in the first stage. I took 2 of them for missile. Golem took 1 of them. When you die, 1 power-up item is spawned, and you're reset to power level 0. So you can immediately pick that up and get to power level 1. So that also significantly mitigates the effect of the death. In this stage, there are a lot of cases where there are sort of alternating. There are patterns that use the full width of the screen, basically, and so we split things up, and actually we intentionally avoid triggering the bonus wave because the bonus waves are not really worth that many points. So that's why we're not killing all the magenta enemies on the sides of the screen, because that will trigger the bonus wave. And the reason we don't do that is because the bonus wave begins in the bottom left corner of the screen. As I said, we play sort of a doubles formation where I usually hang out in the bottom left corner of the screen. And there have been enough runs where I die when that bonus wave enters that there's just no point to engage with it. It's better to avoid it. Play things safe, and that's in general our live strat is just play everything safe. So here again, we're kind of both having to stay pretty spread out, trying to get these enemies that enter from the side as soon as they come in. This is a place where we'll bomb. You cannot kill those enemies quickly enough not to get point blanked by them. I mean, you can dodge the point blank bullets, but again, safety first. Oh, and didn't mention that we are sharing lives here. Crisis Wing has a classic live sharing system, like in old NES games, where when one person dies, or game overs, or would game over, if the other player has lives remaining, the game over player gets to use them. So even though I have 2 lives right now and Golem has 1 or extra lives, really, it's just both of us have a pool of 3.
Something I want to make sure to mention before we leave the stage is that the backgrounds are often repeating. Like, they're not very long backgrounds. But one feature that does distinguish them is their the vertical lanes they set up. So in that stage 2, if you notice a lot of the symmetrical patterns, there's those green Lego blocks capping the sides of the factory and kind of creating those lanes at the, 2/5 and 4/5 marks of the screen. And those I find those helpful to orient where the symmetrical patterns will spawn.
It just marks the center of the screen for you. Like, you can clearly see the halfway point, regardless of where the camera is.
There's that, but there's also that anything like symmetrical patterns are spaced evenly apart from each other based on the center of the screen. And the distance from the center of the screen is a little hard to follow, but the way that the background is symmetrical helps to trace what an even space from the center of the screen is.
Yeah. Okay, so they're like hash marks?
Yeah. And that's not... One thing that's weird is that that's not in every stage, but yeah, that's all.
I don't think I use that anywhere. Or look at the backgrounds at all, really, except for, as I said, just to have a center line.
Yeah, that's one thing that distinguishes this from other shooters is that there's no reference points in terms of distance, only in terms of lateral.
Well, it's a traditional toe plan thing. It's not to give you a background because 1, it's cheaper not to make a background, and 2, that way you have to memorize everything in total sequence. You use reference points. So, with the stage 2 boss, the stage 2 boss has 3 patterns it cycles through. They're pretty easy to dodge, and really what we generally try to do, or what I try to do at least, is split the damage between the 2 ships so that they will die near simultaneously. And so this is an example of our strategy not going to plan plan. And the bomb that we use here is not one that we would typically use, but it's an emergency bomb that we're ready to use. Basically, if one of the ships dies while the other one is not blinking red, so on the brink of death, we just use the bomb to bring things to a close and not have to deal with the last patterns.
One thing I want to note about that boss's design is the orange spread is fixed, like it's always aimed in the same spots. So I'm always able to pick my favorite spot beneath the boss, and Ghouls is always able to pick his favorite spot at the far right corner of the screen, because we know where the bullets are going to be. But then on the aimed green shots, we don't have much choice. You want to tap dodge away from that, but obviously you don't want to tap dodge into a stream that someone just left behind them. So there, we're cornered into the doubling up on top of each other strategy.
Yeah, anytime that there are long aimed salvos, basically we're going to have to do synchronized streaming, essentially, because if there's a single aimed bullet or a small salvo or a homing weapon or something, you can draw that away from the other player and individually dodge. But when you get those long spears, like the green bullets on boss 2, and there'll be more of this on the other bosses, there's just nothing you can do to split them up. You have to dodge together, otherwise you're just creating walls everywhere. So stage 3, the important thing at the beginning is just to remember to drop a medal so that you get the extend item. Works the same in co-op as it does in single player. It's just much easier to collect medals in co-op, so you gotta be twice as vigilant. Remember to drop one.
That's kind of weird about Crisis Wing that each level has a bonus thing, but in 3 and 7, it's a bonus extend, and then in the other ones, it's a bonus, like, wave of enemies to kill.
Yeah. The bonus items take the place of the bonus waves.
So there it was killing the green frogs, gave the bonus extend.
Yep, and that's a place where we split them up left and right.
So for this upcoming part with the yellow roundish enemies, is that in single player, this is a really hectic streaming challenge where enemies come from both sides. And if you want to medal this part, you're going to be kiting bullets away from medals as they drop. It's really fun and exciting even as long as the section goes. But in co-op, you can see we're killing the enemies pretty handily without even, like, trying. So the, like, function of this section gets a bit undone by the co-op.
I do think there is still a specific co-op specific threat there, which is that the bullets that these enemies fire are kind of slow, and there are a lot of enemies, so it's hard to predict exactly which ones are going to fire and when. And this is a case where you can leave a bullet on a collision course with the other player without realizing it. So in that part, in single player and in co-op, I try to stay close to the yellow Zakos so that I can immediately redirect their shots and make sure that they're not heading across the screen. And it also gives you room to drop back and pick up medals after a wave is cleared. So this boss is pretty simple. It's one of the simpler mid-bosses, really.
I think we bomb because the green homing spread that I kite away to the side there, like, kills me. That spread kills me frequently enough that it's like, you gotta bomb for safety, as dumb as it feels.
Yeah, his bullets overlap in a weird way. So here's the first wave from behind. It causes the game to be rated 3 out of 10 on Steam. It's really easy to remember it, well, insofar as there are no cues, it's really easy to remember because it's directly after mid-boss. So after the stage 3 mid-boss, get away from the bottom of the screen.
So for this boss, Ghouls takes it head on. He's hanging out at the bottom, actually dodging everything. One feature about this boss is that for the first phase, there's a safe spot at the very top. So you can see I'm able to hang out at the top there, below a turret, which normally forces you to stay towards the middle of the boss and actually dodge everything. But I prefer hanging out on the far side because once that's cleared out, I'm able to evacuate upward to dodge a lot of the messy patterns.
And also, I'm not really taking it head on. I'm specifically hanging out on the left side and aiming at the 2 weak points that can be destroyed to get rid of the outer lane marker bullet and the spread generator or whatever that's on the left side of the ship. And then that's why I move over to the right side in the second half of the fight to destroy those on the other side. It's just a good reference point for where to attack and make sure that at least half of my missiles are always hitting the boss.
You gotta know, on stage 4, do not mess around with the bats, because they have a lot of health and their spread is super messy.
Yeah, they have long bullets, which are both harder to read and I think have a slightly larger hitbox.
There's that, but for normal enemies in Crisis Wing, they have like a pretty complicated spread. Not each individual spread, but the way that their timed shots layer over each other as they pass down the screen.
Yeah, the pattern is basically as tall as the screen. So here, Golem finally reaches max power. And basically the way that we've been powering up, I'll explain it now, is that...
Because stage 4 is the longest, right?
Yeah, because there's really nothing that goes on until the sandwich. So, the way that we power up is that once one person reaches 2.5, which is power level 2 with a P, P representing a half power level, the other person then starts taking all the power-ups. And the reason for that is that power level 2 to power level 3 isn't that big of a difference in coverage. It is a damage difference, or a DPS difference, but in terms of usability of the weapon, you could really play the entire game with power level 2. But having a P is actually a huge benefit if you die. So it's a trade-off of current power level versus recovery, where the P will let you get your level 2 weapon back in one fewer power-up.
For example, Ghouls just took a death there, and now on his next power-up, he's able to get right to 2 without having to take that middle step.
Well, the death power-up doesn't take me to 2. The death power-up re-equips the weapon, and then I get to 2 on the next one. Since the power-ups are spaced out so much, and they are not doubled for 2-player mode, that can make a huge difference getting that level 2 early. So also on death there, I switched the green weapon. That's intentional. At this point in the game, I don't like having a level 1 blue weapon. I didn't realize I was going to get back to level 2 so quickly, because it's hard to remember what's coming up when you've just taken a death. But
here we're streaming together.
For the green weapon, for recovery, the green weapon works the best of the 3, I find. So, this is like the only fun bonus wave. You get to do a really simple milk.
Yeah, you can milk this, but it scares me so much that I now just kill everything immediately.
Yeah, I made sure not to overdo it. Like here, normally when we're playing, I wouldn't have killed that one on the left so quickly, but just because this is a live run, I wanted to get a few extra medals from it.
You know, that's another benefit of co-op that, you know, those plus sign robots can fire from any direction. But in co-op, you can have one person stationed on either side to catch whatever comes out. In single player, it's a little harder to cover both sides.
Yeah, you can separate the enemies from the popcorn that they spawn more easily.
This mid-boss is impossible, and nobody has ever done it.
Golem, for some reason, can't read that pattern. I find that to be a really easy mid-boss. And the thing is, we did drill it for a while, and he was able to get it more or less, but just in runs, it's always too much of a risk, and the boss dies in one bomb, so it's really not much of a loss. We make an effort, again, more so because it's a live run, but we make an effort to use every bomb possible. 3 bombs per life, so because in co-op mode you do start with 3 more lives, basically, than you would in single player, because each player starts with 1 life and 2 extras. That means an extra 9 bombs, so that does help along the way.
There's that, and I'm not used to playing shooters with quote-unquote resources, or like the way that lives can give you bombs like that. And so one thing that improved my performance in this game a lot was just recognizing when I'm scared that I'm going to die and making sure to bomb at that point. Since bombs, like in a lot of games, will grant you invincibility and deal a bunch of damage.
Yeah, and you do actually have to aim these bombs to get the maximum damage out of them. So for me, I actually try to aggressively bomb on a pattern that I know is going to kill me. This part, you've got enemies coming from the sides, and we're about to have enemies coming from behind again. There's a pretty consistent around-the-world dodge you can do there, but we both bombed because we shouldn't have been trying the around-the-world dodge. We should have just bombed immediately, and it's just one of those moments.
That tells you how scary that pattern is, that we both bombed.
I don't know why I thought we could do it together since we hadn't practiced it. That was a dodge that I just come up with like weeks before the event. And so at this point, we are back to full power. I've switched over to blue because I only wanted green for the powering back up.
This part's pretty fun, but it's also why stage 4 is the longest stage. There's like an extra verse of enemies in this level.
Yeah, it really seems like the boss should come after that wave from behind, but then the stage keeps going on for a little bit longer. So this boss is the place where we basically have the longest synchronized dodging. You just go back and forth across it, not making any effort to get in damage, but letting the weapons do the work, which really helps when you've got max power level. And just going from one side to another, basically waiting for the static green pattern in the center to pass by, then doing a streaming dodge across, and trying to... I watch pretty carefully to make sure that I'm moving at the same speed as Golem, so neither of us gets ahead of the other.
I want to know 2 things about this boss. First, that the static green spread is the first thing I'm noticing in this replay of rank, where at like base level rank, where the adjustable difficulty is at its lowest, you'll only see one volley, is it? Only see one volley there. And if you're on top of it, you have like all the extends, all the power-ups, you'll see 3 waves there, 3 volleys there. I think that's the highest you can get.
I haven't seen more than 3.
There's that, and there's this is a boss in particular where like the spheres circling the boss are moving so fast and they cruise right off the top of the screen. So audio here is a big deal to me because no matter where something is, it's going to do a pew-pew when it shoots. And that is a big part of how I manage this boss that I noted. It helps me time my streaming, honestly, the cadence of the aimed bullets from the spinning circles. This is also much easier boss. Well, not much easier. It's an easier boss than the Stage 3 boss, where the Stage 3 boss had was a composition of a lot of different complex spreads. This boss, I feel like, and maybe this isn't true, it has a slimmer set of complementary patterns, which makes it easier to contend with.
Yeah, the Stage 3 boss has 4 or 5 different attacks per phase, basically, and it has 3 phases. This boss only has 2 phases, and each phase only really has 2 meaningful attacks. So you do deal with more dynamism in this fight, because the way that those satellites orbit around and spread out and are just continuously firing aimed bullets, you have to sort of stay aware of the situation more so than in the Stage 3 boss, where most of the attacks are static and you can just get a feel for exactly where to sit for the entire fight and just make small adjustments for each attack. Also, the final phase of the Stage 4 boss is just kind of trivially easy.
There are times where I'll be at power level 1 and the boss times out on me there. Oh, you gotta remember there's 5 of these Cyclops robots on the 3rd one there, because their spread is super tricky. Their spread occupies the center below them. So our strategy is just to kill them before they can shoot.
Yeah, it's similar to the bats at the beginning of Stage 4, where the micro is difficult, so you want a macro, but there are a lot of them, and there's the 2-player moving camera aspect to contend with, so it's better just to speed kill than to macro, and it's possible as long as you're at weapon level 2. Being at weapon level 3 here, especially having both of us at weapon level 3, really speeds this part along. And this is actually rather uncommon. This run is very good at this point in terms of resources remaining and power level, just compared to our average run. And here, without needing to, since I don't need to move left and right as much while using the missile weapon, I don't suffer as much from the bullet gap when dealing with these horn enemies.
It's striking me how much variation this game gets out of popcorn.
So now we have the snakes pattern, or sort of like a mid-boss. These are static every time. They fire aimed bullets, and the only difficult part is when there are 2 of them at once. This is kind of where the run hits its first hiccup.
Make sure, I'm going to highlight here that when Ghouls died, his power-up went up into me, and I immediately took it. That was really confusing in the moment. What happened?
Yeah, it's always frustrating with the power-ups. If one player dies near another, the power-ups can do annoying stuff. you can get swapped to a different weapon that you didn't want, or they can end up on top of each other so that one player has to take both of them, and one gets wasted if 2 people die. But yeah, because of that, I have to play at power level 0 for a while, and this is where we really have a weapon. This is the first accidental weapon configuration. Everything else has been intentional up to this point. Having blue is fine, but if we can only have one weapon, red is preferred, and having either player power level 0 is bad. But that also illustrates that when you're at max power, you can't have a P when you die, meaning you have to get 2 items to get back to power level 2. That's why it's a long time before I get back. So now, because Golem has the blue weapon, I'm going to take red and power that up because it's more important that we have the 2 complementary weapons than it is that either person has their initially designated weapon. For the stage 5 mid-boss, you're fairly safe if you stay at the edges of the screen. He does shoot those aimed green bullets, but they're slow and easy to misdirect. So we kind of just stay on the edges, do damage a little bit at a time, and I prefer to kill the guns on the front that are shooting those static lane markers before the phase transition, but playing it safely, didn't actually get that and ended up just bombing the second phase.
Yeah, the thing about the second phase is that the first phase is pretty static, and the second phase introduces some lazy homing bullets and then like aimed spreads. And so by clearing out those lane markers, you're able to swerve around the screen more readily, where you don't need to in the first phase because it's all static.
Yeah, you need that free horizontal dodging space in the second phase, and if you can't make that by destroying those forward guns, then that's when we just bomb.
Here are the walls. These walls are really cool in that you can destroy them piece by piece, but if you kill the center, it dies. And then if you let one get on screen on top of another, like they can layer on top of each other, and it's all really interesting, but it doesn't matter because their spawn points are static, so you can just kill them before they do anything.
Yeah, these guys really should spawn lower on the screen.
Or just have a shield that, like the bats, you can't kill them until they're far down the screen.
Yeah. It's just a part that could use a little bit of tuning, because as is, it's kind of like... The main function of this is just to empty out my brain and make me forget where we are in the game. And it's another long section of repeated enemies after this that really is not when you want to forget what you're doing.
But you know, having dead space in a game helps me, I think, because like there's that contentious opinion that pausing is cheating. And so, you know, when a game gives you dead space, that's time where you can reset your brain without having to pause it.
Yeah, you need some downtime. Also, it has nothing to do with pausing being cheating. For one thing, we're playing live, so we can't pause.
Oh, that's true.
And for another thing, in arcade games, you can't pause. So it's just something that really should be built into the game. It's just that when there's too much of it, then it becomes a, hey, now my mind's wandering and I'm thinking about what's for lunch and falling behind on the game. So in the section with these missiles, essentially you can dodge behind them or you can try to speed kill them and micro after doing a kill. Because our weapons are swapped, it didn't go exactly as planned. And Golem took an extra death, but he's going to stick with the blue weapon type because it's just going to help us a little bit damage-wise with the boss. Once again, he did die with a P in stock, so in the next stage, we would be able to recover this.
This boss is pretty, like, memorizable. This boss falls pretty easily to memorization in single player, even though there are some things that are dynamic per run, like when the second phase fires its homing spread.
Yeah, I would contest that this boss is easily routable.
But
the first phases.
Even regardless of that, this boss is just like undoable in co-op because there is so much homing going on and it's so wide that even with my rosy opinion, I think we need bombs to get through it.
This boss is definitely the wall of the game. This is a substantial uptick in difficulty, and it does follow more in the model of the Stage 3 boss than the Stage 4 boss, and it's a harder variation of that. I've gone looking for replays, and almost no one fights this boss without bombs. I say almost no one. I have not found a replay that fights it without bombs. Now,
wait a minute.
It's absolutely doable without bombs.
I just uploaded a replay.
I know. It's absolutely doable without bombs. It's just that in actual clear runs, I've never seen someone on replay do it without bombs.
I mentioned earlier that I liked how Popcorn has variation, and here we have the same flying pattern as the Zako in Stage 5, but instead they have those bullets that like extend as they go down the screen. That's so cool.
Accelerating bullets.
Yeah, they have, well, yeah. And these big monsters are awful if you let them layer with the bug enemies.
Yeah, so Stage 6 is kind of an apology for how long Stages 4 and 5 were. This one is pretty brief. You do get a lot of new enemy types, and just in general feels different than the stages that had come before. It doesn't have that, like, here's a long wave of tanks kind of feeling to it. It does, you know, the stage structure is still basically the same with alternation between large enemies and formations, but it just has a quicker feeling to it.
One thing I like about the stage structure of Stage 6 is that, like, Crisis Wing introduces this really tricky star enemy that spins and fires bullets, and it runs through its variations, like, super quickly. Like, there's an introductory one, and then there's a doubled up one, and then there's one paired with Popcorn, and after that you're done. Like, it still takes time to introduce an enemy before digging in real deep on it, but then the pace of variation is very quick, as opposed to, say, the bats in Stage 4, where, like, we're going through kind of insignificant variations.
Well, yeah, those are more just one continuous wave, whereas these are set up into distinct variations. So, nevertheless, this is a place where we usually bomb, because those are a real pain in the ass to dodge, including the popcorn formations here are really tanky. These Batsugun enemies actually take more bullets than the normal popcorn does to kill, and they're pretty painful to deal with. So at this point, yeah, we would bomb if we had a bomb, but we didn't, so it ended up in a death. The weapon strategy is all still fine. Golem died with a P in stock again, and I am hanging on to my last P, not powering up to max, so that when I inevitably die, since I'm out of bombs, be able to recover it. Oh, am I going to take level 3 here? Okay, I did take level 3 there.
I have died so many times trying to get the right color on that power-up.
My guess would be that at the moment you said, in the moment you said you didn't want it.
Yeah, that makes sense.
We're always calling out what we're doing as we play live, so, or not just live, I mean as we play in co-op in general.
Here's a safe spot.
Yeah, so this is a safe spot. that we use because I found this safe spot, and as long as I'm the one that finds the safe spot, I have no qualms with using it. I just don't like copying other people's safe spots. It's kind of boring.
The trick is to make sure you have enough firepower to kill the enemy before it comes too far down the screen, but then nothing's aimed, so you're fine there.
Yeah, you have to be about 1.5 ship lengths down from the top of the screen.
It's kind of like the green enemies in stage 1 with those triangle formations, except these ones are a little thank you.
So going into the stage 6 boss...
Actually, sorry. If you let 4 power-ups get on screen at the same time, the first one despawns. Just wanted to mention that.
Which, the thing is, even in this case where there are 4 power-up carriers, the thing is every 6th power-up is a bomb. So it's 5 items, then bomb. So most of the time, one of these is going to be a bomb. But it's hard to predict at this point in the game. So I just want to pick them up one at a time. And obviously, we're just sticking with the same weapon strategy where Golem's got blue and I've got red. And we're now both maxed out. Going into the stage 6 boss, which is handy because this guy doesn't actually last as long as some of the earlier boss fights. But personally, I find his attacks... I find the visibility in this fight pretty bad. And so I much prefer to bomb it than trying to do any orchestrated strategy.
Yeah, I don't care for the visibility during that boss either. He has a lot of bullets that flux or blink or do different things. I have been able to route it in practice mode, but in an actual run, it seems like the rank is forced up high enough that my route doesn't work, and I haven't learned a way around it. These green popcorn enemies are pretty lethal, just because they're so long and they fire so quickly. So, put next to these blue enemies, I prefer to kill the green helicopters.
Yeah, so at this point, stage 7, we don't really have much routing done. And that's because co-op routing is something that we have to do by playing a full credit. This game has no 2-player practice mode. So to practice stage 7, that's already a commitment of like an hour just getting there. And then to additionally route it with checkpoints throughout the stage it's pretty time consuming. And so in this case, we are relying more on having excess of resources, more so than we normally would in a run, just because of the inconvenience of practicing. It doesn't really have anything to do with the stage layout or the nature of this game.
It's more than inconvenient. Like, when you get to stage 7, you're already fatigued from having gone through the entire game, so you're like... It's not as easy to learn when your brain's already been, used up.
Right. Practice modes exist for a reason. It's not like Crisis 1 doesn't have a practice mode. It's just that the 2-player was added later to the game, and so it didn't end up being incorporated into the practice mode.
It works really well for a game not made with 2-player from the beginning.
Because it has solid design.
Huh.
So this boss fight is one where the bullets move kind of fast and they're flashy and hard to read, and really the way to dodge it is just to line up perfectly in the center with him. But I was off, and this is a place where, as I pointed out, dodging while sitting on top of each other is something that is hard to do precisely, so just because of the visual confusion of it, so that's where that death came from.
One thing that's interesting about these 2 mid-bosses, the one we just saw was modeled after the stage 4 mid-boss, but didn't have any of its patterns. But that boss, the purple version of the stage 1 boss, had pretty much the same patterns, just wider, like with thicker lane markers. So, yeah.
You can more or less use the same strategies, but at this point in the game, best to play things safe. So also, I've picked up blue here again. This is another accidental weapon pickup because of the death. That's what I ended up with, and so I'm gonna power it up instead of switching since we're so late in the game. But it's not what I want. Here, that death is just because these guys are kind of a mess. And there was a case where both the power-ups from our deaths ended up on top of each other. And so now we're really powered down a lot. As with Raiden, if you pick up two power-ups of a different color at the same time, one of them is, well, a lot of times both of them have gone to waste.
I think we got the extend. We killed the two carriers.
Watch this, and I think we don't get it.
Oh no! Because we had max metal.
Yeah.
So on the stages with extend bonuses, if you're at max metal, you don't get the extend. You have to make sure to drop it. That already anyway.
I didn't, or whatever.
Here, I'm executing the route flawlessly, and Ghouls is dodging off the cuff. You know, commando.
Yeah, again, that was a place where we didn't really have a route, so live Golem is like doing around the world. And I'm like, okay. And then I fell too far behind him and needed to start dodging bullets individually.
So there's like very specific ways to dodge all of these patterns.
We have routed it in co-op. Actually, this is the one part of this stage that we have. But fuck it. You know, this is, at this point, it's like, so when we were playing this live, I'm just happy that we've made it past stage 5. At this point, like, everything else is just bonus. So I just wanted us to bomb through, and we had enough lives left that I thought it was possible. I really wasn't confident, but I thought it was possible we'd make it through the final boss.
I didn't realize you don't have any extends.
It doesn't matter, though, because we both share lives. So yeah, the final boss is, you know, your typical Coop plan or really cave style TLB, where it's a small thing that moves around fairly fast or faster than other bosses, much smaller target, and shoots way denser bullet curtains that are fast and complicated. Nothing about this, like, this isn't Hibachi, nothing about this is particularly insane, but also it's not something you want to do in co-op, and it's such a substantial increase in difficulty that it's really begging you to dump resources.
And for a while I thought Loop 2 might be doable, like, because this game is, like, I would say console difficulty. It's not crazy, but then the second loop really does go all in. Like, these are really fast bullets all over the place, right off the bat.
Yeah, I haven't really messed with it at all. I guess one more general strategy thing to remark on is that we did chain medals throughout the entire game, except in those couple places where we needed to drop them for an item. And that is the main driver of rank in Crisis Wing, how long your medal chain has been. There are other factors as well, but that's the primary one, at least that you can control. So there are a few reasons that we do that. First of all, I think it's just kind of lame to drop medals just to keep the rank down. I don't know. It's not exciting. And there's also that you do get a lot of points for those max medal chains. Like, it's 10,000 per medal, and 25k or 50k, or sorry, 250 or 500 is an extend. So 50 of those medals is an extend, which does add up over the game. There's also that having the bullets faster. So rank does increase the number of bullets in places, but mostly you're going to notice it in that it makes the bullets faster. That actually is kind of helpful, or at least it's helpful to have a consistent, predictable bullet speed, and I think it's easier to do that by maxing out the rank than keeping it at the minimum.
Even then, a faster bullet leaves the screen more quickly, and like, this isn't a game where the bullets are going to be so fast that you don't see them.
Yeah, the bullet speeds here are pretty mild, all things considered. So the fact that they start out at minimum rank, that they're so slow, is more of a disadvantage than anything. I would rather have them going at a moderate speed and just get off the screen and out of the way.
Alright, well thank you for watching our replay of Crisis Wing Co-op.
I think this is the only co-op player out there.
Well, I thought you said those other guys did it on Twitch.
Oh, they did, but I don't know if there's a replay of that available.
Oh, that's a shame.
But yeah, the other team, Macho Man Mo and the Heady Bear, have cleared in co-op, so there is at least someone else that's done it. This is a really good game for co-op, barring the issue with the practice mode.